One more week of Old Testament, guys.
That's it.
I feel like I've been saying that for 3 months. All right, I think we're probably live.
We're happy to have you with us today as we are back. We're all back again.
Full strength.
You did fine without us, Pastor Smith.
Well, I was fine for myself, but Pastor Hoffman had to be as good as both of you guys.
and he is.
Yeah.
God bless Pastor Hoffman.
Yeah.
Well, we're back again as we get close to wrapping up our Old Testament journey, and we're in the Chronicles of the Kings. The Chronicles of the Kings. I like to. Sometimes they call it the Chronicles of the Kings and the Prophets, particularly Second Chronicles. First Chronicles is kind of
The Chronicles of David.
Yeah, it is David.
Basically, yeah.
And I hope you folks have noticed as you kind of recall back in April when we were in 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st, 2nd Samuel, where a lot of this is talked about in terms of when it happened, the history of it. The chronicler, you remember, is Ezra, and he's writing in, 400, 450 BC as a part of the Reformation by which he's helping the remnant who returns from Babylonian, Persian captivity to remember their history. And it's pretty interesting to have them recall how hundreds of years earlier these kings behaved. They were terrible. A couple of them were okay. But man, when the kingdom split, you know, I don't think the North had a single good king, did they?
I can't think of any. Yeah, I think it was like 100% or 0%, whichever way.
Of course, they were up in Baal territory. Judah was a little more protected because they were at least in Jerusalem. But I found some interesting facts. Judah was ruled before they got carried away into captivity by 20 kings, 19 of which came from David's line. We're going to find out who that one was.
That's quite the trivia question.
There's one that was not from David's line.
Okay, it's like a Final Jeopardy question.
It is. Yeah. It is. Of the 20 different kings, here's what I found. 2 were faithful. Well, at least they had 2. That's better than the North, huh? These kings are awful.
It's a low bar to compare against.
Yeah. No, I won't say it. I was going to say, you think our kings are bad. Judah endured 70 years of civil war with Israel after the split. So Jeroboam and Rehoboam kicked it off, and they had a real military. Imagine that. The great kingdom of King David united 12 tribes of Jacob, and they ended up 10 against 2 in civil war. And then after that was kind of completed, then they had 14 years where Baalism. You remember Baalism from back 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st, 2nd Samuel, right? The Baals and the Ashereths, the gods of fertility. They built all the godless nations all around. They were gods of so that agriculture would prosper. They thought if they prayed to the Baals and they had temple prostitutes, and there was a lot of sexual sinning because that fired up the gods, and when the gods got fired up, then they'd send rain and their crops would be good. It was just a disgusting. Remember God said he was what kind of a God in the 10 Commandments?
Jealous God.
Jealous God. Boy, he was jealous of Baal. And remember the 450 prophets of Baal? Who was that? Which prophet? Elijah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, there was about 14 years after the Civil War where Baalism was introduced right into Judah by the kings. We'll see that. That's what we're going to cover today. Those 14 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to discuss what was like the official religion of Judah.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of depended on, it was kind of like, well, officially, technically we worship Yahweh, but in functionality, they didn't really.
Have you ever heard of Christians who are faithful to God on the weekend and hang on to the world during the week?
Never.
Never heard of that.
Describes all of us to some extent, right?
All of us to one degree or the other.
Yeah.
It's that old Jesus plus, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love Jesus, but I also love this and this and this and this, which are not a part of the will of God. We'll talk about that more today. Okay, so Judah endured 70 years of civil war, then 14 years when 5 kings brought Baalism into Judah, where the temple was. Then came 103 years of prosperity. We must have a good king there, huh? And 94 years of decline when everything went to pot. And then 31 years of remarkable spiritual reform under good King Josiah. The last 22 years, swift destruction. So it was kind of roller coaster, huh? Mm-hmm. It was kind of up and down depending upon the king.
Yeah.
The Chronicles of the Kings. Well, today we're going to start at chapter 21, and we're going to read most of the next 3 or 4 chapters that introduce us to the 5 kings who were responsible for bringing Baalism into Judah. And we're also going to search for a few other little hidden details. So if you have your Bible open today, it's actually verse 4, chapter 21, verse 4, that we'll start with. Jehoshaphat, in the first couple verses of chapter 21, Jehoshaphat dies, rested with his fathers, my NIV says, buried in the city of David. And Jehoram, his son, succeeded him. Now he's got lots of brothers. Lots of brothers.
That's a problem.
That's a problem. Watch what these kings do to their brothers. Why is it a problem?
Well, you don't really want to be the younger brother. You don't want to be the next in line. Yeah, there's a lot of suspicion about you sometimes, yeah. Or they're the aggressors. It depends on the story.
So, speaking of what happens, you might as well read, Pastor Smith, the verses 4 through 7.
All right.
Chapter 21 of the Chronicles of the King.
Here's the soap opera. Okay. When Jehoram had ascended the throne of his father and was established, he killed all his brothers with the sword, and also some of the princes of Israel. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, as the house of Ahab had done. For the daughter of Ahab was his wife, and he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Yet the Lord was not willing to destroy the house of David because of the covenant that he had made with David, and since he had promised to give a lamp to him and to his sons forever.
All right, a couple things there. First of all, he kills all his brothers. It's going to become a reoccurring theme here today as we read. God is a jealous God, but I guess power as king made them pretty jealous too, huh?
Paranoid, suspicious. Yeah, I mean, you see this, like, I just, I love history. I don't know if you know how much you guys, but even, the royal houses of Europe, I mean, this happens all throughout history.
Yeah, it does.
You want to keep the power for yourself, so you get rid of everyone else who might try to take it.
Now, verse 6 helps us recall a guy by the name of Ahab.
Mm-hmm.
Any remembrance from Samuel and the Kings? Who was one of his wives? One of his many wives.
Jezebel.
And
she was maybe the worst.
The worst.
Of the two, yeah.
And had a daughter, interestingly enough, had a daughter by the name of Ahazayah. Ahazayah. And I don't have a lisp. His wife, Ahazayah.
We all came about an hour early to practice pronouncing all the names for today. So.
And he does evil in the eyes of the Lord. That's going to be another theme that we're going to get sick of reading. But verses 6 and 7, Josh, what does the Lord still have in his heart?
The covenant.
A covenant, a promise. And Jehoram is not that one who was outside the line of David. He was in the line of David. And so the Lord was not willing to destroy Jehoram's house. You want to keep reading then, Pastor Josh? 8 through 11 would be good.
In his days, Edom revolted from the rule of Judah and set up a king of their own. Then Jehoram passed over with his commanders and all his chariots, and he rose by night and struck the Edomites who had surrounded him with the chariot commanders. So Edom revolted from the rule of Judah to this day. At that time, Libnah also revolted from his rule, because he had forsaken the Lord, the God of his fathers. Moreover, he made high places in the hill country of Judah and led the inhabitants of Jerusalem into whoredom and made Judah go astray.
Yeah, so here's the deal. Athaliah, his wife, brings in Baalism. She was the daughter of the worst of them, Ahab and Jezebel. And they start to set up, when it says they set up high places, that's like shrines, that's like places to worship Baal. And isn't it interesting how the Bible says, how the chronicler Ezra says the people of Jerusalem prostituted themselves? Meaning, again, what? It's not a sexual prostitution, it's a spiritual, They were not faithful, They were whoring it around with other gods. People of Jerusalem, where the temple was.
Yeah.
Should be no excuse, And so Jehoram receives a letter, verse 12, from Elijah.
Ooh, there it is.
So we're talking here about the same time frame when the great prophet Elijah was speaking. Pastor Smith, read the letter.
I would love to. And a letter came to him from Elijah the prophet, saying, Thus says the Lord, the God of David your father, because you have not walked in the ways of Jehoshaphat your father, or in the ways of Asa king of Judah, but have walked in the way of the kings of Israel, and have enticed Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem into whoredom, as the house of Ahab led Israel into whoredom. And also you have killed your brothers of your father's house, who were better than yourself. It's like, okay, there's a lot, because of all these things.
And by the way,
behold,
any of those brothers you killed would have been better than you.
Behold, the Lord will bring a great plague upon your people, your children, your wives, and all your possessions. And you yourself will have a severe sickness with the disease of your bowels, until your bowels come out because of the disease day by day.
Yeah, we're going to get a little more graphic here by the time we finish, but God kind of predicts you're going to die, brother, and it ain't going to be pretty.
Yeah.
Bowels. So.
That's not the way I'd want to go.
Not the way I want to go
I don't
either.
know if this Bible study should probably be airing after 8 p.m. or something.
Yeah.
It's like that's a little
Get ready for
adult
dinner.
content.
Mature rating on it or something.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that the Lord strikes Jehoram then is he raises up the Philistines, and hostility of, I'll read a couple verses here till the end. The Lord aroused against Jehoram the hostility of the Philistines and of the, you know what? Before we get to the Philistines, we got to remember who Edom was, right? Just to the east of Jerusalem. And it was the people who were the descendants of Esau. And to this day, by the way, that battle reigns. Edom against the children of Esau against the children of Jacob, in the form of the Jews today and the Arabs. So the Lord aroused the Philistines and of the Arabs who lived near the Cushites. They attacked Judah, invaded it, and carried off the goods found in the king's palace, together with his sons and wives. Not a son was left to him, except Ahazayah the youngest. After all this, the Lord afflicted Jehoram with an incurable disease of the bowels. There you go. And in the course of time, at the end of the second year, his bowels came out because of the disease, and he died in great pain. His people made no fire in his honor. as they had for his fathers. 32 years old when he became king, reigned in Jerusalem 8 years, passed away to no one's regret, and was buried. How'd you like that at the end of your obituary?
That's about as harsh as the chronicler. Yeah, well, I mean, maybe we'll see a little bit too. But, generally positive. Putting the best construction on, like Ezra really knew the eighth commandment as he wrote about these things. Yeah, that was.
But he's like, there's no redemption for this guy.
Yeah. So we just gotta call it like we see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I think the thing that we want to take away from Jehoram is his weakness to stand up for Jehovah, and at the whim of this evil wife of his, who was the daughter of two of the most evil, ungodly people. Again, I certainly don't want to put all the blame on the women, but I tell you what, in this case, she was stronger than he was, and he forsook his role to lead the sons of Jacob, and he led them into prostitution with Baal. So nothing of significance in the reign of Jehoram. So his youngest son, chapter 22, Pastor Josh. Why don't you read all the way through 6?
And the inhabitants of Jerusalem made Ahaziah, his youngest son, king in his place. For the band of men that came with the Arabians to the camp had killed all the older sons. So Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, reigned. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri. He also walked in the way of the house of Ahab, for his mother was his counselor in doing wickedly. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as the house of Ahab had done. For after the death of his father, they were his counselors, to his undoing. He even followed their counsel and went with Jehoram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, to make war against Hazael, king of Syria, at Ramoth Gilead. And the Syrians wounded Joram, and he returned to be healed in Jezreel. Of the wounds that he had received at Ramah, when he had fought against Hazael, king of Syria. And Ahaziah, the king of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel, because he was wounded. Boy, there was too many names close by.
All right, let's sort them out. All right. So the next king we're talking about here is Ahaziah, the youngest son of Jehoram. Interestingly enough, because the other princes of Judah killed all his older brothers, so he's the only one that's left. And I think they did it for a purpose, because he was too young, he was weak. As a matter of fact, he became a puppet of his mother, Athaliah. And remember who Athaliah is, the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. And in essence, he was a puppet king. He was just a puppet king. And he was slain in a bloody purge that came against from the house of Ahab. But here's verse 3. He walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, for his mother encouraged him in doing wrong. Well, of course, Ahab was his mother's father. You got all this straight? You got the genealogy? You got the family tree all out there, right? And when he went with Joram, son of Ahab, king of Israel, to war against the Arameans, he was defeated in battle. So let's almost see again how Ahaziah was nothing more than a puppet king. Verse 7 to 9, Pastor Smith.
Ooh, okay, here goes nothing. But it was ordained by God that the downfall of Ahaziah should come about through his going to visit Joram. For when he came there, he went out with Jehoram to meet Jehu, the son of Nimshi, whom the Lord had anointed to destroy the house of Ahab. And when Jehu was executing judgment on the house of Ahab, he met the princes of Judah and the sons of Ahaziah's brothers who attended Ahaziah, and he killed them. He searched for Ahaziah, and he was captured while hiding in Samaria, and he was brought to Jehu and put to death. They buried him, for they said, he is the grandson of Jehoshaphat, who sought the Lord with all his heart. And the house of Ahaziah had no one able to rule the kingdom.
Ooh, I think we might be coming to that one person who is not of the line of David, because once they kill Ahaziah, there's no one in the house of Ahaziah powerful enough to retain the kingdom. So guess who becomes queen? A daughter of Ahab and Jezebel.
Yeah.
How far, Judah, can you fall?
Yeah. This is, it's like an act of judgment.
It is.
From God, yeah.
It is.
You all your people want to follow in the footsteps of Ahab, here you go.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You want Baal? All right, here's your queen, the queen of Baal.
Yeah.
And so, as we enter the last part of verse 22, and we're not going to read all of 22, but there's a wonderful hand of God in all of this, because a godly priest, God bless the priests at the temple. We kind of forgot about them. There is still kind of the kingdom of the right and the kingdom of the left going on here. The kings who rule, and the temple, the priests, who are still the keepers of the ark, shall we say. And they're going to do something sneaky. They're going to do something to hide the next king who will be a child of David, so to speak. So I want to just read, in order to so that we don't have to read all of 23. We'll read the rest of 22, but we'll skip some of 23. I just want to read a summary here of Athaliah, the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, ruled from behind the throne through her husband Jehoram and her spineless son Ahaziah. And after Ahaziah's death, which we just read about, Athaliah seized the throne and murdered Judah's royal household. But she missed baby Joash, who had been hidden in the temple by the priests. And in the 7th year of Athaliah's reign, the priests bring this 7-year-old Joash out of the temple and crown him king. Athaliah is executed out behind the stables, and the hardcore Baalism came to an end in Judah, thanks to the pastors, the priests.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised. All right. Having given you that little summary, then let's. I'll read 10 to the end of 22, and then we'll start a little bit into 22 and skip a bunch of it. When Athaliah, this is verse 10 of chapter 22. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw her son was dead, she proceeded to destroy the whole royal family. There goes the line of David. But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Jehoram, took Joash, son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the royal princes who were about to be murdered, and put him and his nurse in a bedroom. Because Jehosheba, the daughter of King Jehoram and wife of the priest Jehoiada, that's the priest that I really want to concentrate on. Jehoiada is our hero. Because she was Ahaziah's sister, she hid the child from Athaliah so she could not kill him. He remained hidden with them in the temple of God for 6 years, while Athaliah ruled the land. So Athaliah, if you want that final question in Jeopardy, 20 kings in the southern kingdom, 19 were of the line of David. The one was queen.
Yeah, see, it's a trick question.
It is a trick question. Whose father was Ahab and whose mother was Jezebel. All right.
You could sell this screenplay.
It's not bad, is
to
it?
a major,
Yeah.
movie.
You can get confused by all the names, but
Well, yeah, they'd have to change the names.
but we're tracking pretty good here. Are you following this, folks?
I barely am. So
We're gonna ask the question here when we get done with a couple more chapters. Why do you think Ezra wanted the returning remnant out of captivity to know all this history? And yes, I think you and Pastor Hoffman mentioned this last week, how different the Chronicles. I mean, it's the same material as First, Second Kings.
Yeah.
But how differently the chronicler puts it, and the things that are in the Chronicles, but are not in the Chronicles. And I always found it quite interesting. For example, that what did I write down here earlier? Saul is hardly mentioned at all in the Chronicles. Mm-hmm. There's a lot about him in First, Second Samuel.
Yeah. And
David's sin with Bathsheba, not mentioned at all.
Not in there.
Not mentioned at all, as well as a lot of other things. Pastor Josh, back to you. Boy, have we got some names for you.
Oh boy.
Chapter 23.
Thoughts and prayers.
Let's just go to about verse 4, halfway through verse 4. Not far.
All right. But in the 7th year, Jehoiada took courage and entered into a covenant with the commanders of hundreds, Azariah the son of Jehoram, Ishmael the son of Jehonan, Azariah the son of Obed, Maaseiah the son of Adaiah, and Elishaphat the son of Zichri.
Now the beauty of all those names are, they don't matter, okay? Next is what comes.
So that was me stumbling my way through.
I wouldn't have done any better, brother. Okay, verse 2.
And then they went through Judah and gathered the Levites from all the cities of Judah and the heads of fathers' houses of Israel, and they came to Jerusalem. And all the assembly made a covenant with the king in the house of God. And Jehoiada said to them, Behold, the king's son, let him reign as the Lord spoke concerning the sons of David. This is the thing that you shall do.
That's far enough.
Okay.
So there's, when it's time, take this 7-year-old boy, and the only reason we're bringing him out of hiding is because we got to get the throne of David back. We got to get the throne of David back. But of course, Jehoiada, the priest, is the real leader of this. But he's getting all the Levites, the other priests who take care of the temple and the sacrifices and the offerings. He's getting them all together. And when we get to verse 11, Jehoiada brings out the king's son and put a crown on him, presented him with a copy of the covenant, and proclaimed him king. Long live the king. Now, Pastor Smith, you want to read verse 12 through 13? 12 and 13?
12 and 13. When Athaliah heard the noise of the people running and praising the king, she went into the house of the Lord to the people. And when she looked, there was the king standing by his pillar at the entrance, and the captains and the trumpeters beside the king, and all the people of the land rejoicing and blowing trumpets, and the singers with their musical instruments leading in the celebration. And Athaliah tore her clothes and cried, Treason! Treason!
Well, of course. She sees the writing on the wall. You know what? We say that phrase.
I know, exactly.
Writing on the wall. It's got all brand new meaning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All brand new meaning since we read Daniel.
Daniel chapter 5.
See how blessed you are to be reading this Read Scripture challenge. She saw the writing on the wall. Okay. Well, this is kind of fun, so let's put her to death, Pastor Josh. 14 and 15.
He's having way too much enjoyment from these dark chapters.
14 and 15. I gotta have a drink.
Water, right?
Water.
Okay. Then Jehoiada the priest brought out the captains who were set over the armies, saying to them, Bring her up between the ranks, and anyone who follows her is to be put to death with the sword. For the priest said, Do not put her to death in the house of the Lord. So they laid hands on her, and she went into the entrance of the horse gate of the king's house, and they put her to death there.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Yeah, we're going to kill this heathen queen, but we're not going to do it in the temple. And so the priests rise up and they take care of things. All right. Verse 18, then Jehoiada placed the oversight of the temple in the hands of the priests who were the Levites, to whom David had made assignments. So back to letting the priests do their duty, presenting burnt offerings, it says, verse 18, right? stationed doorkeepers, and the last verse of chapter 23, the city was quiet because Athaliah had been slain with the sword. Slain with the sword. So the ones who brought Baal worship into Judah and as a result prostituted the children of God, and it's about a period of 15 years that Jehoram, Ahaziah, and Athaliah reign, now under the godly counsel of Jehoiada the priest. This little 7-year-old is going to grow up to be a pretty good king. So that's what we're going to see here in chapter 24, the things that he did that were good. But before chapter 24 is over, Joash turns out to be not so good too. And here's the deal. Because Jehoiada, our hero, dies. And without that mentoring, without that oversight from the spiritual dimension of the kingdom of Judah, the right hand can't handle things. Can I say before we even get to application, America needs the Christian church?
You can say it, yeah.
Yeah. Without it, it has no spiritual direction that at least leads to God. Well, we're ahead of ourselves. We're going to read most of chapter 24. Chapter 24 of 2 Chronicles. You go ahead, Pastor Greminger, and start out and maybe quit at 5. 1 to 5.
Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba, and Joash did what was right in the eyes of the Lord.
Oh man, isn't that a refreshing verse to read?
Oh, it is.
And Joash did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Remember when we went through the Judges? Mm-hmm. And some of them did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and some of them did what was right. All right, go ahead.
Joash did what was right in the eyes of the Lord all the days of Jehoiada the priest.
Uh-huh.
Jehoiada got for him 2 wives, and he had sons and daughters. After this, Joash decided to restore the house of the Lord, and he gathered the priests and Levites and said to them, "Go out of the cities of Judah and gather from all Israel money to repair the house of your God from year to year, and see that you act quickly." But the Levites did not act quickly.
Okay, so Joash has a good idea. He wants to fix up the temple. I suspect after all these rotten Baal worship kings, it had been in disrepair for a while. So it's time for a little capital campaign. So they put out a box and tell the Levites to go out among the people and raise some money. Yeah, the worst thing pastors want to do is try to raise money. Not really. We love to raise money. But it says the Levites didn't act at once. So, Pastor Smith, 6 and 7.
The king summoned Jehoiada, the chief, and said to him, "Why have you not required the Levites to bring in from Judah and Jerusalem the tax levied by Moses, the servant of the Lord, and the congregation of Israel for the tent of testimony? For the sons of Athaliah, that wicked woman, had broken into the house of God and had also used all the dedicated things of the house of the Lord for the Baals."
Yeah, keep going.
So the king commanded, and they made a chest and set it outside the gate of the house of the Lord. And proclamation was made throughout Judah and Jerusalem to bring in for the Lord the tax that Moses, the servant of God, laid on Israel in the wilderness. And all the princes and all the people rejoiced and brought their tax and dropped it into the chest until they had finished. And whenever the chest was brought to the king's officers by the Levites, when they saw that there was much money in it, the king's secretary and the officer of the chief priest would come and empty the chest and take it and return it to its place. Thus they did day after day and collected money in abundance. I'm just going to keep going until you stop me.
Yeah, go to 14.
Okay. And the king and Jehoiada gave it to those who had charge of the work of the house of the Lord, and they hired masons and carpenters to restore the house of the Lord, and also workers in iron and bronze to repair the house of the Lord. So those who were engaged in the work labored, and the repairing went forward in their hands, and they restored the house of God to its proper condition and strengthened it. And when they had finished, they brought the rest of the money before the king and Jehoiada, and with it were made utensils for the house of the Lord, both for the service and for the burnt offerings, and dishes for incense, and vessels of gold and silver. And they offered burnt offerings in the house of the Lord regularly all the days of Jehoiada.
Yeah, it's a great story. A great reform that was really based upon the free will offerings of the people to reestablish the temple as the place of meeting between the people and their God. And they spared no. They didn't make the plates out of tin and cardboard. Gold and silver again. I think all the times that we read in the Old Testament, the lavish accoutrements, that's a good word, isn't it? For the temple. What do you think of your God? When I was district president, I would talk to the pastors about just landscaping and up and down the hallways of the churches and the classrooms. If you don't take care of them, it's a reflection upon what do you think of your God, And I'm so proud of St. Paul's, even our last capital campaign was largely spent on fixing the place up after, years and years and years. It deteriorates and you have to keep it. And our place looks terrific. Our school, our hallways, our the sanctuary, I think it reflects upon what you think of your God. And so this is a good story as long as Jehoiada is alive. Alas. Verse 15 to 19, Pastor Josh.
But Jehoiada grew old and full of days and died. He was 130 years old at his
What?
death.
130?
A bit older than us.
Yeah.
And they buried him in the city of David among the kings, because he had done good in Israel.
He really was almost the king. Joash was 7 years old. Buried him in the cemetery of the kings. Go ahead.
And toward God and his house. Now after the death of Jehoiada, the princes of Judah came and paid homage to the king. Then the king listened to them. And they abandoned the house of the Lord and the God of their fathers, and they served Asherim and the idols. And wrath came upon Judah from Jerusalem for their guilt, for this guilt of theirs. Yet he sent prophets among them to bring them back to the Lord. These testified against them, but they would not pay attention to them.
Yeah, so here we go. Asherah is the Baal's wife, and all of a sudden they're back to Baal worship. It says the officials of Judah came and paid homage. So they what do they call those guys who bureaucrats? The guys that just kind of stay on as we elect a new president, but the old bureaucrats stay there, and then we elect another president, but the old bureaucrats are still there. And you wonder sometimes whether our elected leaders really run the place or the bureaucrats. Well, when Jehoiada finished his influence, his positive influence upon the king Joash, the bureaucrats came back. And they influenced him. And he listened to them. There's the problem. He listened to them, right? And even the prophets came to warn him. But it didn't work. And there were all kinds of folks who, at the end of chapter 24, come against him. The Arameans come against him. The Syrians come against him. Because Judah, verse 24, the end of verse 24. Because Judah had forsaken the Lord, the God of their fathers, judgment was executed. When the Arameans withdrew, they left Joash severely wounded. His officials conspired against him for murdering the son of Jehoiada the priest, and they killed him in his bed. So he died and was buried in the city of David, but not in the tombs of the kings. And he had a son, Amhaziah, who succeeded him as king. Now we're not gonna go any further. This is kind of the complete story of what I said was the 15 years when Baal worship was added to the worship of our great God. And when we come to the next king, then Amhaziah, my little summary of Amhaziah's reign is he showed some godly restraint against the enemies who had killed his father. And after defeating Edom, Amaziah foolishly picked a fight with Israel. Bad idea. Israel trounced Judah, tore down 600 feet of Jerusalem's walls, and drove out Amaziah and killed him. Until we get to Uzziah, who was the son of Amaziah, who reigned then for 52 years. Uzziah is a good story. So keep reading these Chronicles of the Kings. Enough for today. We'll talk a little bit now about what we learned from all of them. But why did Ezra, the chronicler, want the people coming back from exile to know at least this part of the history? What do you think, guys? What do you sense out of?
I think two big themes that you see in the Chronicles are the importance of, I guess you can kind of put together. One thing, the importance of leadership.
Yeah.
But within the kings and the priests.
Yeah.
And, we're anticipating a priest king. He's also a prophet. Jesus that's going to come and be the best, be the ideal. But I think, you see this in the course of the history that when, if you have a good king and a good priest together, things are going great. They're walking in the ways of God, but then more often than not, they go 0 for 2 on those things, and they're walking in the ways of Ahab. They're worshiping Baal. So I think there's just that, your leaders are very important. You see this in all of the history. If the king is setting up the high places, if the king is introducing false gods, it trickles down to now. And there's a faithful remnant, and we assume we don't really hear much about it. But then when you have like from what we read today, we've got Joash and Jehoiada. When that combo was going on, things were great. But I think it's that what Ezra's trying to show them. We've learned what works and what doesn't, so we have a chance to do something new, to go back to the basics, to worship God rightly, and let's do that.
Yeah.
So I think there is that high view of the priests, the Levites, when they're actually doing the right thing.
Yeah. Lessons from history, huh?
Yeah.
And Ezra wants those returning exiles to know how important the temple is, because they had to rebuild the temple, right? Mm-hmm. And they did.
Yeah.
And to set in place the Torah, because he not only gave them Chronicles, he made them reread the first 5 books of the Bible, Moses' books.
Yeah.
And you put together the Torah, which reveals the will of God and establishes the covenant, and then you show how in the Chronicles of the Kings and the Chronicles of the Prophets, how that covenant is carried out by God, even in the worst conditions. God never forgets his covenant, and that's why they're back as a remnant.
Yeah.
Pastor Josh, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I think, as we talked about, where these Chronicles are more of a positive spin, or, the positive side of it.
Yeah.
I think with that is kind of the backdrop. The fact that, these are so negative, we'll call it, I think almost makes it pop. Like in art, you got one color and then like a different color that is very different, and it makes it stand out more. I think, it's another way, and we've seen God do this through so many people, but it's this time it's Ezra trying another tactic to get through to the people. Like, we're going through our history, and there's good, but there's a lot of bad, and so let's learn from the bad. Let's not follow in that same way. And I just think it's another tactic to just try to get through to the people.
Yeah. I think too. When we look at our history, I've always been struck by a commentary about history that says, it really just takes one generation to break the link of faithfulness. Like it only takes one weak link in a chain to destroy the strength of the chain. And, I wonder why God said, at the end of the Ten Commandments, and if you follow these commandments, if you're faithful, if you follow my will, you'll be strong blessings unto the third and fourth generation of them that love me. But if you disobey, bring curses upon the third and fourth generation. And I think of our Lutheran theology, that was raised up at the time of the Reformation. Maybe we could compare it to what Ezra did, even as the reformer for the Old Testament people. So Luther and his followers prepared that Reformation, and it spread to the rest of Europe. The Church of England and Zwingli's Reformation that led to the Baptist Church and the Methodist Church, and Wesley's up in England. All the great reformers of the 1500s, and then somewhere along the way, even in Europe, they became the state church. We remember what happened when Sweden and Norway became Lutheran nations. So now it doesn't matter what you believe, just if you're a citizen of Sweden or Norway, you were a Lutheran. And some of that even happened in parts of Germany. And the church got soft because everybody was Lutheran just by virtue of citizenship. So the damage that happened to the state churches, and yet there were quote-unquote free churches that continued the faithful proclamation of the Reformation. But then there became, quarrels between the two, to the point where the people in the free churches, the churches of faithfulness, were oppressed. And the only way they could have religious freedom was to get on a ship and come to America. Which is what happened with our Lutheran forefathers and foremothers. And it is just that generational thing that if you get soft, you can lose it in one generation, and multiply that, of course, by 5 or 6 generations. And how we have to be so grateful to our forefathers and foremothers. We're 163 here at St. Paul, years old, 163. That's at least 6 generations, or around 6 generations. They've been faithful and passed on to us the truths of the Reformation, right? But many European influences have come here to America that have watered down Christianity. And today we see that in the demise, if you will, of the Christian ethic in America. And I think, here again, these are lessons from the chronicler, to pay attention to history. And it's an encouragement and a challenge, I think, for us. We've got to be faithful. We opened school today. It was a great sight for pastors. I was at home watching on the what do you call this?
The
live streaming, the live stream of the chapel service. So I didn't get to see the whole picture from the front back, but Mr. Loudon showed me the picture. Our church couldn't have been packed. You tell the story, Pastor Smith.
Yeah, it was packed. It was the first, we call it like the all-school chapel, where all the kids are in the same in the sanctuary together, and then the parents are
a lot of
parents were here. Yeah, it was awesome. There was a buzzing before it started. Yeah,
and this is St. Paul's hallmark ministry. It's our top of the line ministry here at St. Paul's is the teaching of that faith to the kids, to the next generation, and we should be so happy that over 163 years we've preserved that, and where God has blessed it to. Our school is packed, waiting lists in some of the classrooms. So I think that those are some of the lessons of history that we should, number one, be thankful for, and number two, be diligent.
Yeah, that's such a huge theme, especially early on. Exodus, Deuteronomy, passing the faith on to the next generation. That's where we see the breakdown. Yeah, it is discouraging that you think you could be like, 12 generations in a row of solid Christian teaching, and then one breaks it, and then you never know what's going to happen after that. I mean, God can bring people back, of course, but we want to bring up the next generation who will grow up to be leaders, because we want leaders in our families, leaders in our churches, hopefully leaders in business and in our government and everything too, to be using the Word of God as the guiding compass for our lives and our decision making.
So why do you two think, in your vision for the future of St. Paul's, a director of childhood and family ministry is so important? Huh?
It's all about I mean, because the church is so important. The church and the school is so important. Obviously, if a kid goes to a Christian school,
there's a butt coming.
They're getting it. There is a butt coming. You sensed it, yeah. You're getting that faith taught and reinforced, and then if they come to worship on Sunday, maybe Sunday school. That's all well and good, but if it's not also happening in the home, a lot of that can be kind of snatched away. And so that's why we're excited to hopefully be getting a director of children's and family ministry soon, so that they can minister not only to the children when they're here, but also to the parents, equipping the parents to reinforce and be the primary faith leaders at home, supported by the church and school. I mean, that's the way God intended it, and Martin Luther intended it.
Yeah, the small catechism that we don't often refer to has got in it something called Tables of Duties.
Yes,
and it's addressed to fathers and mothers.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that parents have to be have a theology degree or anything. It just means you teach the simple truths of the faith and point them to Jesus. Mm-hmm. Pray together, read a picture Bible together. I mean, that's about all we can do with our kids at this age. But
God works through that.
He does. Yeah.
All right. So the Chronicles of the Kings and the Prophets, and we have just read some chapters that, if you're watching this on Thursday, will be your assignment in a couple days, and you can take the day off, or you can read them.
No, they can't.
No, they can't. I'm always saying ways in which.
Yeah, somebody was telling me that you gave him permission to skim stuff the other day. I was horrified. Yeah, I was absolutely horrified. I can't remember who it was.
So, what have we got coming this Sunday?
Oh, I think I'm preaching.
I think you are.
I'm pretty sure. I checked my notes. Yes, it is me. Well, we're at this crossroads now where we're going to finish Chronicles on Wednesday of next week.
Yep.
And then we're going to start the New Testament. We're going to start the Gospel of Matthew on Thursday the 26th. So this is going to be kind of there's going to be some intertestamental stuff, between the Old and the New Testaments. And
it's a challenging time too.
And how does the Old Testament kind of leave us, as I'm going to say it, on a cliffhanger ending, and poised to hear the message of the New Testament that's going to fulfill everything.
You're going to prepare the way?
Well, I mean, John the Baptist did a pretty good job of that, but I will try to reprise that role.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're happy to be moving into the New Testament soon, and happier even that we have really been refreshed in what the Old Testament is all about. We don't preach as often on the Old Testament. So if you've been a member here at St. Paul's for years and years and years, you've heard a lot of sermons on the Old Testament, but not nearly as many as you have in the last 8 months.
Yeah, they haven't not since December have they heard one from the New Testament.
Yep.
So
it's been a great. I've sure enjoyed it. Yep. All right, that wraps it up for today. God bless you.